What's going on, my homies? We're doing another shop talk with my boy Rich from Hydrilla Gear. Like I always say, if you guys got any questions about forward-facing sonar, women, what to drink tonight, or how best to rig your boat, this is the guy to talk to.
I got answers for all.
You got answers. He's got guns, bro. So what we're gonna do, ever since Scotty Martin won that forward-facing derby, ironically, a forward-facing derby on Lake Okeechobee, Rich has been getting call after call about forward-facing. Like, hey, I put it on, I can't see anything. Hey, I put it on, where does this go? And a lot of guys are putting these on, whether it's the Livescope, whether it's Active Target, whether it's the Mega Live. Everybody wants forward-facing now. It's a hot topic, and a lot of guys are mounting them and doing some things incorrectly. So, Rich, I just want to run through a quick video. What are some basic practices if you're going to do this kind of DIY on your own? Sure. What are some things to be careful with? I already see one thing that's interesting. You got a 360 here, and this transducer isn't exactly high enough. But what are a couple things to kind of note? Yeah,
so like you already pointed out, like typically if we didn't have the 360 here, you know, you mentioned it earlier, kind of like the two-hand. Yeah. Some guys will take out a dollar bill, and they'll go the distance of a dollar bill off the collar of the motor housing.
So just like that, basically, that's where you want your, the towing.
Yeah, and they'll mount the transducer up about this high.
Okay.
Right, but now that we've added the 360, we're splitting hairs here. We only have so much shaft length, no pun intended. And we need to be we have to have a certain distance off the head of the 360 so it doesn't interfere. So we're kind of limited there, but we make it work. Some of the things that you want to look out for, and again, it's in the manual, but you're not going to read it. So we'll go ahead and give you the answers. They don't want you to, the manufacturers don't want you to use a cable tie, okay, like a zip tie, cable tie, and just run it home on a shaft, okay? Believe it or not, this clamp right here we buy them off Amazon like everybody else. All this is it's for bicycles.
Really?
It holds the brake cable.
Yeah,
to the frame.
Exactly what you're talking about, yeah.
Right, it comes with low profile zip ties. They kind of have a low head on them.
Why
that's what we
exactly do they not want you to direct zip tie that?
I think just because the transducers now, they're so advanced, so sensitive. They've got a bunch of wires running through the cabling here. And when you start cranking down on those zip ties, you're gonna damage the wires inside of the sheathing. So, and I'm sure that results in not interference, I'm sorry, but clarity issues.
Yeah, because you're squishing wires together and stuff like that.
You're just really crimping it all. So,
so I guess point number one is keep this thing as high as you can, not as high as you can, but 2 fists high is a good starting point. If you have to accommodate the 360, you can kind of play around with your distance.
Sure.
But then be very careful with the wire. The wire is like everything, your signal runs up it, everything's sort of integrated in that wire tech-wise. What about when it comes to transducer angle? I know I've played around with adjusting on my active target, like my angle offset and that. I've also played around with, say, so I'm in shallower water, say fishing 5 to 10, 3 to 10. I'll actually turn it more forward, like this one's set up. However, then I'll go out to Smith Lake, which is a really deep spot of Bass Lake, and I actually have to turn my transducer down 1 click. It's not like, it doesn't like point straight down, but it's like at a little more down angle so I can fish 20, 30, 60 feet of water. Is that something that you find with the Livescope as well?
Personally, you know, I'm not fishing 60 foot of water. I haven't traveled out of the state, but what I'll do is, you know, you can adjust your transducer to where, you know, we call it shining. You can see it bouncing off the bottom, right? You'll get a hard, bright edge. And if I look at that edge, and it's close to the boat, further underneath the boat, and I want to see further out, I'll adjust the transducer so it's more of a forward angle.
Interesting, okay.
You know, and then obviously in deeper water, you're not going to get that band, that bright band, because, you know, you're in your 60 foot of water. So the way that I do it, I just look at my graph, and depending on, you know, the depth I'm fishing, again, if that bright band is close to the boat, I know I can get a little more scope out, you know, and turn it forward.
But I guess the reality is, I think a lot of guys think they mount this and it's done. You know what I mean? But there are on the water adjustments, such as the angle offset that you're gonna do. Like depending, one thing that I've actually found that's kind of interesting is when I travel between Alabama and come down here to Florida to hang out, I don't know if it's because of the magnets of the earth or whatever, I get a different bottom offset down here than I do up in Alabama. So the moment I get down here and drop my boat in and to go start fishing, I actually have to increase my angle offset. I don't know if it's because I'm like further south in the hemisphere or what, but I found that up north too. I went to Wisconsin and I actually had to raise my angle offset to get that bottom to come up. So I think the one thing guys need to be aware is that it's a dynamic technology, and it varies, you know, depending on the water that you're on. So you got to kind of play with the transducer a little bit and play with your angle offset.
And it's funny, Mikey, because this stuff's been out for years, right? It's been out for quite a few years now. And I'm in South Florida on the East Coast. My customer base was always, we're not going to use this stuff down here. We don't need it. We have too much vegetation. Our lakes are too shallow, right?
Yeah.
And we sold some of it, but not a lot.
Yeah.
Did some installs, but not a lot. Then Scott goes out and gives them the beat down, you know, basically, right? And it has been nonstop, you know, and it's all those customers that told me they weren't going to need it.
Yeah.
Now they're coming back for it, and they figured it out. And
so the other thing too, and you mentioned this to me when we were just chatting about the boat and the way you got this one rigged up, it's integral that you have, and Nathan, my buddy from Sea Clear, always talks about it, clean power for these, right? They need even voltage, so you get peak performance and consistent performance. How do you achieve that, or what's the easiest way to achieve that for somebody who's putting one of these things on?
Well, we'll take Sea Clear, for example.
Okay.
They have a harness you can buy in the back, shows up at the house, and you're going to want clean power from the back of the boat to the front of the boat to power your devices on the bow. Okay. That includes your sounder modules, any of the graphs up here. Power is important. Okay. So if you're running lead acid AGM batteries, you're going to want to look at lithium. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm telling you, it's especially if you're running 4 or 5 graphs, forward-facing sonar. So you got to keep the power to it. You got to keep it independent of all the boat accessories, in my opinion, the pumps, you know, aerators, the lighting, all the stuff that can give feedback. For best results with your forward-facing sonar, you need to keep that power from the back of the boat to the front, independent of itself, and make sure you use the right gauge wire, which is going to be determined by the length of the rod.
Right. So that leads to my other question. One of the things, since this isn't like a standard on the boats yet, kind of like we were talking about with the power poles, I get a lot of questions from guys. They got like a 2010 Stratus, you know, they got, you know, the old Z9 Nitro or something, and they're putting forward facing on, and they're like, hey, I have 2 graphs up my dash, I have 1 up here, and I'm adding the forward facing transducer as well as the box. Is the best practice for that, and this is what I tell them, but you're more of an expert, like just get an extra lithium, even if it's a 50 amp hour, and run this independently off that power source. Is that usually, if you're just adding it on, trying to get by, is that usually the best way, or can you run that off your cranking battery? Is it okay?
I will, there's a bunch of different avenues you can go, right? And everyone's gonna have their own answer. What I would do, you know, if a customer calls me, or one of my friends calls me, or a guide calls me, and says, I'm adding forward-facing sonar. Okay. And so we'll start with, well, what battery are you running in the boat now? Okay. Is it lead acid? Is it AGM? Now, lead acid, you know, we're not going to pair up with a lithium. If the guy's running an AGM and it's newer and it's got some life in it, we can pair that up with a lithium.
And when you say pair, you mean like parallel it?
Yeah, so we can parallel them. They can be tied together, and we do that because we want to keep the cost down. You know, this stuff is getting... It's
ungodly expensive.
It's getting out of control. So we go into it application specific, okay? Or take each individual for himself and say, look, you got an AGM battery as your cranking battery right now. It's a relatively new battery. And then we can add a lithium battery to it, okay? And that'll help power your electronics. And in doing that, you don't have to get into a lithium battery charger, because your engine is charging the AGM. AGM's going to charge lithium. So we can go into it with like budget minded. And
but I guess when it boils down, you're going to need more power.
You're going to need more power, period.
Okay, so that's just a reality. Like you're going to need more power
sure.
to basically do it. Perfect. So all these amateurs out here with new live scopes going on. If you guys got any questions though, Rich is a good buddy of mine. I don't know what you call it. He's like a consultant, I guess, for me when it comes to rigging my boat and that. He's got some cool like Hydrilla Gear accessories that go on my power poles and that are absolutely badass. But he's really helped me to kind of tweak my boat and do it in the right way. Like, you can have all this stuff on your boat. It doesn't mean it works right. You need to set it up correctly, and that's what I really rely on Rich for. So if you guys got any questions, hit him up. I'll drop his website and his cell phone down in the description box. But I appreciate it, homie.
Thank you, sir.
Let's get out and
All right.
go catch some fish.